Welcome once again to the official MUFON podcast. I'm your host, Richard Beckwith. Tonight, we have the distinct honor once again of welcoming a guest who is not only deeply embedded in the world of UFO investigations, but stands at its forefront on a global scale. He is the Director of International Investigations for MUFON, overseeing field investigators and cases from around the world, leveraging MUFON's vast database of over 140,000 cases. A lifelong UFO enthusiast whose fascination was sparked by the infamous 1965 Northeastern blackout and fueled by his own compelling personal sightings, our guest brings decades of experience and a unique perspective shaped by his background in transportation safety, safety investigation, journalism, and film production. Having investigated over 400 cases personally and reviewed thousands more annually, he is a self-described patterns guy, constantly seeking connections and deeper understanding within the high strangeness reported to MUFON every day. His work has taken him from analyzing soil samples in rural Pennsylvania, featured on Ancient Aliens, to deciphering the mysteries of objects pacing FedEx jets over Mexico. Get ready to dive into the truly unexplained, because tonight we're joined by Bob Spearing. Bob is here to share insights from some of the most compelling and often unsettling cases that crossed his desk or are currently under investigation. These aren't just isolated incidents. They often reveal astonishing patterns across time and geography. Bob's work highlights MUFON's dedication to the scientific method, collecting data, conducting field investigations, and utilizing forensic analysis to seek rational conclusions for unexplained phenomena. He's seen firsthand how reports of objects can reveal hidden military testing, or even suggest the possibility of technology far beyond our current understanding, potentially involving anti-gravity or radar absorption. Prepare for a deep dive into the reality of the unexplained. This conversation might not help you sleep at night, but it will certainly open your mind to the incredible scope of the UFO UAP phenomenon and the vital work being done to understand it. Bob Spearing, welcome to the MUFON podcast.
How are you, Rick? Good to see you again.
Good to see you too. I'm doing very well. I'm looking forward to the symposium this year. I've already paid for my ticket and bought my flight, and all I have to do now is pay for my hotel and all the accoutrements that come along with the MUFON Symposium. The food, which we will have this year, which I'm looking forward to because we really haven't had. I mean, we've had food there, the dinner on Friday night, but I guess we're having more food. Mm-hmm. So I'm looking forward to that. I suspect that you will be there as well.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm doing field investigator training on Thursday, how to investigate orbs. On Friday, I have the state director's meeting. On a Saturday afternoon, I'm doing MUFON's cases of interest from the previous year. Maybe we can get into that today, some of those cases. And then we have the Saturday night special presentation. It's going to be an overview of Project Aquarius, our digital library, and then we're going to get into some real heavy-duty Stringfield Diary stuff, followed by an update on some of the materials our lab has in possession, and then I think we'll finish up with bringing Ron James up to put his movie on, Accidental Truth, next.
Yeah.
I'm going to be busy.
Yeah. Fortunately, I don't have to give a presentation this year, so all I have to do is, attend the board meeting and the state directors meeting, and just enjoy the speakers. And the cool part is I get to interview our speakers as part of the podcast thing here, and so I've got Mr. Jane next, or prior, all depending on when this one airs, when this one goes out. But nonetheless, so let's get into it. But Bob, let's talk about what we're both interested in, which is this topic of UAPs, and I'm interested in, you're in New Jersey, and so you've been intimately involved with the investigation of the drone issue taking place in New Jersey, and I'm interested in your take on the notion that the drones essentially were permitted to be there, that there was a reason that they were there, that they were all man-made, and there was, basically nothing to see here, folks. Move along, and that just seemed that seemed a little strange to me. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't know if you knew, but when I retired, I moved over the border into Pennsylvania. So I'm technically out of Jersey right now, but I'm still only about 15 miles away. Yeah, when the story broke, I had a lot of different theories about what was going on. The first thing, they were coming in from the ocean, a lot of these drones along the Jersey Shore. And they were also over some military bases, including Picatinny Arsenal, which is up near me. And Picatinny has a pretty interesting backstory also. But they were coming in from the ocean, and people speculated that they may have been coming from submarines or from some sort of mothership ship that may have been Chinese or Iranian or some sort of, foreign adversary of the United States. And basically, the Biden administration said, "Oh, there's nothing to see here, folks. Don't worry about it." But they didn't give any particular answer. What was interesting, though, was that Picatinny Arsenal, one of the military bases in the United States, there were also a couple in England that had these drones. Picatinny Arsenal had no clue as to what these drones were. So that started to worry me, because if you're going to launch drones, you have to have a flight plan with the FAA, especially if you're going over United States military bases. And Picatinny Arsenal knew nothing about these drone overflights. So I leaned towards adversarial man-made objects. When the Trump administration came in, they gave sort of a vague answer that, they were experimental drones and they were doing other things, and that suggested that they were ours. But that was really a vague answer too. So are they somebody else's? Are they ours? The other interesting thing was somebody brought up the point of mimicry, that if they were some sort of non-human intelligence, that they were mimicking drones, and that they weren't actually human technology. And there's actually a backstory to that too. A couple of years ago, when the Chinese balloon got shot down, they shot down an octagon over Lake Huron, and they claimed they never recovered it. We started looking into octagon-shaped objects, and we came across a case near Offutt Air Force Base in Kansas, where a guy was watching these blue orbs following commercial jet airliners nearby, and the third one that went by, the blue orb, turned into an octagon. So I can't even rule out mimicry, that maybe there's some sort of camouflage, ours or otherworldly or other dimensional, that's mimicking these drones. What's interesting is that they were very large drones, and they had red and green lights, some of them, but wasn't your usual FAA designated lights. They would blink, and they were very large. And somebody came up with the idea that they were what are called nest drones, the nuclear emergency something team drones that looked for radiological signatures. It's interesting that in Jersey that month, there was a shipment of radiological material that was robbed out of a truck. When the truck went to deliver it, the case was cracked open, and this medical radioactive material was gone. So there's a theory that these things were actually looking for this stolen material. And the Nuclear Regulatory Commission apparently has 80,000 of these drones that are capable of overflight or across the United States looking for this type of thing. So, is it Iranian or Chinese? Is it, people robbing radioactive material for a bomb? Is it otherworldly? Is it ours? I don't think we're ever going to know.
Ever, never, ever, huh?
I don't think ever. I think the Trump administration that was their answer, and you're not going to hear another thing. I mean, when they shut down these three objects over the Yukon, over Lake Huron, and near Barrow, Alaska, after the Chinese balloon was shut down, that story got buried. All right. Did they ever find them? Will we ever know? Dropped off the face of the earth. If they don't want you to know something, they just let the media drop it.
I completely agree with that, and they have a way of persuading the media, probably very easily, to alter their stories somewhat. Well, I mean, that's been clear for many decades now that the media is complicit in the Pentagon's agenda, whatever that might be, especially as it relates to UFOs and UAPs. So, what about your own conclusions, Bob? Have you is that something that you feel like you can expound on about what you've found, and based upon your review of the evidence and looking back now, have you reached any conclusions about yourself personally about what you think they might have been?
I'm leaning towards the fact that they came in from the ocean, and that if this wasn't some sort of military exercise, large-scale military exercise, then it's adversarial, like China or Iran. I will tell you, though, that back in, I think it was 2017 or 2018, the United States did a massive simulated invasion of another country, a forced entry type of exercise, and they were using C-130s flying across the United States, and people that night in December saw all of these lights in the sky from Virginia all the way up to Washington State. And MUFON got like nearly 100 reports, UFO got reports, and it turned out it was C-130s that were launching drone swarms, okay? So this is like 7 years ago. So if we were experimenting with drone swarms back then, it could have been us this time doing some sort of massive military exercise, or it could have been some sort of foreign agent in doing an incursion into our space as sort of a simulation to see if they could penetrate us. I lean towards it wasn't us, it was China or Iran, man-made.
And you would also have to agree that is scary as hell.
Very scary. Yes.
I mean, what's the difficulty with arming one of these drones with a small nuclear device? You mentioned a couple minutes ago about how large or small some of these things might have been. As small as what were the smallest ones? And didn't you say that what they were the size of a vehicle?
Yes, and the reason for that, they believed, is if they were nest drones looking for something radiological. I can't explain it thoroughly, but the machine, the radar that would look for this signature on the ground has to be super frozen. And basically the majority of the drone was a giant refrigerator. Okay. So that's my understanding of these nest drones are very large because they have a very large cooling system for whatever the instrument is that looks for radioactive signatures on the ground.
So your inclination is to say that they were likely created adversarially and not likely the product of some kind of alien technology.
Yeah, I'd lean towards China or Iran first, United States second, some sort of non-human intelligence third.
And you can understand why the White House and why the Pentagon would not want to, admit that we've got Chinese or Iranian or Russian drone swarms flying over some of our sensitive military installations or even over large population centers, that certainly would not be something that you would ever want to admit. And so I agree with you that it's not likely that we will ever really truly know what exactly they were. Do you know if the activity is continuing?
No, it's calmed down. A part of it also was hysteria. For every, one real report, people started to become hysterical once it was all over the New Jersey, radio and television stations. And a lot of it may have been just commercial airliners. The interesting thing, though, is that because of the Russian-Ukrainian war, drone technology has advanced 25 years ahead of where it would have been by now. It's like they're saying that the age of tanks is over because you can take out a tank with a drone very easily. But now they're coming up with these counter systems to drones to be able to drop drones out of the sky before they can, blow up something. So drone technology is way, way, way ahead of where it should be. The other interesting thing is that recently Trump has come out and said, and there's like a mind war going on, I think, with the United States, China, and Russia, where Trump says we have a weapon, a big, beautiful weapon that's so far advanced in the future, you don't even know what we have. And so he was intimating that whatever they're doing at DARPA or Area 51 is so frightening that the Chinese should be careful. But now the Chinese today came out and said that they have this very inexpensive machine that can detect stealth bombers now. Because stealth bombers, one of the ways they minimize their radar signature is by scattering different radio frequencies. And this machine that the Chinese claim to have can eliminate all of that noise and find the stealth bomber. So there's a lot of back and forth going on with these drones. The last thing I'll say about these drones is when I mentioned that the octagon that went from an orb into an octagon near Oakford Air Force Base, when we started researching all of those octagon-shaped objects that are in the MUFON database, the majority of them were seen over or near very, very sensitive military locations, including special operations in San Diego. So that would be scary if it is adversarial.
I feel a little queasy, to be quite honest.
There's a lot going on that we don't know about. That's for sure.
Well, there's no question about that, and that's what on a day-to-day basis, like anybody else. Sometimes I feel pretty optimistic. Things might turn out okay. And then you start thinking about the implications of all these things that we talk about, and you have to, your mind just goes off and wanders into these really dark places. Sometimes you have to, it's really difficult to digest all of it, especially as quickly as the information is coming at us. And
right.
Last year you spoke at the MUFON Symposium about recent cases of interest, essentially, and you're going to be doing the same thing this year. Mm-hmm. And so I'm curious. Do you have any cases of interest? I mean, I don't want to ruin your talk at the symposium, but do you have any cases you'd like to talk about that maybe people should know about based upon the facts of the case and what makes them unique and of interest?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple of examples. Two that I don't have to actually tell you what the case is. When people submit reports to MUFON, sometimes, a lot of times now, they actually submit videos and photographs. And because cell phones are getting more and more sophisticated, those blurry videos that we usually get, they're starting to get clearer. All right. In the majority of videos, they're out of focus because it's night. It's trying to focus on something that's, an infinity black background. But we captured two really good videos of black triangles. And these two videos are really, really good evidence that we've captured triangles. So Seth Feinstein, who is one of our photo analysts on our photo analyst team at MUFON, he's going to present these two videos. Sam Maranto, who's also on our photo analysis team, has a third video, and I don't know what it is. It's massive. It's lights going back and forth, and he's been interviewing the witness, and he's been analyzing the videos. So we have 3 videos we're going to be presenting. We also have a case in Australia where a guy filmed an object, 3 objects flying in formation over a national park in Australia, a very big, vast, remote national park. And 2 of the objects actually collide, and one of them goes down, and he actually took pictures of it as it was going down. The helicopters showed up. Our investigator called the Rangers there in Australia, the police department, and they all denied that they did anything, but it was clear that something had crashed in this national park after colliding with another object. So that's another case we're going to be doing. The most interesting case, though, is actually a series of 3 cases. One fell, and I won't give too much away because it's a very, very interesting case. A fellow's driving down a road in Abbeystead, UK. It's a historical case. It happened in 2009, but the fellow reported it last year, so we include it. He claimed that while he was driving, he saw Noah's Ark in front of him about 20 feet up in the air, and he says it was moon colored, and he could actually see the planks on the ship, and it had a little hut on top. And I thought that was very odd, but he said it was the night that the windmill got taken out. And apparently about an hour east of this location that same night, there was a wind farm, and something hit this windmill and destroyed 2 of the blades, and the one blade was never found. Wouldn't you know, we got a second report from a girl from that very same night who wrote to us and said, the night that the windmill got hit, she said something was over our house, shone a green light. She got violently ill. She had a substance all over her. So these 2 cases combined pretty much like validate each other. But don't you know, the same day in another part of the world, a third person saw a Noah's Ark with black pirate flags hovering over a lake in the United States. So we have actually 3 people reporting, 2 people reporting seeing Noah's Ark, and a third person that same night becoming violently ill and may have lost time. And the windmill gets taken out, and they never found the blade. It's just a bizarre case, very entertaining.
Well, you know, I mean, I have to say, as I listen to that, my interpretation is that this is something that is the result of the manipulation of the perceptions of the witnesses.
Absolutely.
I mean, clearly, you know, well, I don't know. Things have gotten so fantastic these last few years. I don't want to make any definitive statements like this, but it seems to me that, you know, nothing wooden the size of the Ark should be flying without some sort of, you know, propulsion system. And counterintuitively, I cannot imagine Noah's Ark sporting pirate flags.
Right. But, you know,
well, maybe somebody bought it and, you know, and decided to fix it up in their own way and use it as a pirate ship, I suppose. But I mean, clearly it's a manipulation of the perceptions of the witnesses that caused them to see this. And so it's a large object that, you know, what's the purpose of it?
Right. You know, it's interesting because in like Abu Dhabi, I believe it is, they have these shows where they can actually project massive holograms in the sky to make it look like anything. Okay. And when you hear about, you know, Project Bluebeam and that they can use the ionosphere to project images of, you know, God or whatever to manipulate people, I believe we have technology like that. So I don't think it's such a stretch to make somebody believe that they're seeing Noah's Ark ahead of their car. I mean, the CIA has been manipulating people's minds since the 1960s doing experiments. It's just unusual that two of the cases happened in England, fairly close to each other on the same night, and a third case happened that same night on the west coast of the United States. So it was a very large operation, let's say, if it was some sort of manipulation.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it, it doesn't really require a tremendous amount of sophistication to cause people to believe certain things. The War of the Worlds is a perfect example of that. All it took was for people to hear that there was something like that happening and perceive that it was taking place, and then take action as a result.
Some people killed themselves that night. Some people committed suicide that night. The
right.
War of the Worlds.
Right. So. I do have a couple of questions about the videos relative to the triangles. And this is out of my own curiosity as an investigator into this particular field. But did the triangles appear to have the lights at each end of the corner with something in the center?
Yes, absolutely. It was your classic triangle, small white lights, and you can tell it's not elongated like an airplane. It's a like three-sided even triangle. It's got the red light in the middle and three white point lights at each point on the triangle. And we've learned some very interesting stuff about triangles over the past several years. A lot of reports in the MUFON database, the witness actually says that the triangle, all right, is not flying point-wise. It's flying I don't know how to do that here. Broad end going forward, all right, which I find very unusual because that's not very aerodynamic, okay? The other thing is it's not always white point lights. A lot of times they're amber point lights. And the third thing is that we now have newspaper article reports from the 50s and 60s, one even in like 1964, with a drawing in the newspaper article describing exactly what we're seeing today, these black triangles. So if they are some sort of, secret TR-3B vehicle or Aurora aircraft, then and it's ours, then we're so far ahead of the curve that, like, when Donald Trump's saying, yeah, we have a weapon that's, 22nd century, maybe we do, because we didn't come out with the stealth bombers till the 80s, all right? So what was flying around that looks like a typical black triangle in the 1950s? Even Charles Fort, the original 40 or UFO investigator in the 1920s, he had reports of triangles going back to the 1890s. So if they're not ours, whose are they?
I agree. I know of at least two witnesses that have seen a triangle like this and photographed it and described the triangle as being about the size of an aircraft carrier. And, sort of tumbling in the sky, not really traveling in any particular direction, but as it hovers, just sort of turning around without, having clearly to rely upon the speed of the air over its surfaces in order to be aloft. So and what the people I'm familiar with also witnessed the lights at each end of the craft, and I have some images of them, this craft with these lights on it. That's why I was curious about that, because that's clearly consistent with a number of these other triangle sightings. And so I'm going to have to ask you, what do you think that is? What are these triangle sightings? Is this us, or some kind of a advanced, now fairly developed DARPA project, or are we really looking at the potential for alien spacecraft?
Okay, this is an answer where I think it's both. And I think we've reverse engineered something. In the 1990s, a guy sent in a case to MUFON. Actually, sent it in like 5 years ago. Policeman named Andre. in the UK, and he was at the edge of one of their national parks watching a highway. Thought he saw a helicopter with a white light shining down, and he radioed in to ask if they had any sort of police helicopters in the area. As soon as he radioed in, this object shot towards him, and he was in a Land Rover on a hill, and a blue light shone down on him. And we've come to realize, because of COVID, that blue light can kill germs. And so he may have been possibly being readied to be abducted. Okay. But when the light went off, he got out of the car and he looked up, and above him was this massive triangle with white lights at each point and a red beacon in the middle. But the interesting thing about the beacon, the red beacon, he says it was twirling like inside, like an old-fashioned police car from the 1940s or 50s. So that says to me, that's probably, not from another planet. All right. That seems to be a very man-made type of beacon on the bottom. Interestingly enough, though, 3 months later in the same county in Yorkshire, a girl was reading a book under a tree. Black triangle comes over her, shines a blue light on her, and she claims she was abducted by little grays. And they dump her back in the field about 200 feet away from the book she was reading later on. So was it the same object in the same county 3 months apart? And did it turn down abducting the cop because they realized it was a cop and may have caused more problems than it was worth? But let's say we have triangles. My impression is that we may have back engineered or reversed technology that's not at least from this world or from this world at this time. I lean towards time travelers a lot. Could it be some sort of future technology? We got a sample of it. We reverse engineered it. So I think that there's two possibilities. One, that some of these triangles are ours and some of them aren't.
I agree. I mean, you remember Ben Rich's statements that we,
Absolutely.
and why wouldn't we, if we were able to at least back engineer some of the things that we've recovered from whoever those folks are? I'm a little concerned that, we've been contaminated, that maybe, I've said this before, but maybe we wouldn't be so close to the brink of self-destruction had we not been assisted by our exposure to technology from out of this world.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, I'm thinking of the material that was allegedly recovered from the Roswell, or rather more aptly, the Corona crash, which included microcircuitry, night vision and those sorts of things, flat screen displays,
self-healing metal. Right.
And so, would we be so close to killing ourselves if we had not been aided in our ability to target our enemies, for example, and didn't that technology set us off in all sorts of different directions, and probably a lot of different directions technologically that we might not have thought of otherwise, just simply by being exposed to some materials that we were on some certain level able to understand. So, I agree with you, Bob. I think that it's likely that quite a bit of what we see is probably attributable to some sort of an unacknowledged special access program, more likely a craft developed by a corporation somewhere, like Lockheed or Raytheon or Boeing, just like Ben Rich talked about, So let's get a little esoteric. One of the you said you thought about the time theory, the future, or rather the time travel theory, the idea that it's perhaps easier for someone with better more developed technology to travel through time. And so can you elaborate on that a little bit? Are there some things in some of the cases that we've investigated, that MUFON has investigated, or that you've personally investigated that hint at that particular vein of the ufology mystery?
Well, yeah, sure. Pretty much, I've tracked like 3,500 years of history, looking for examples where there was, say, battle interference. And Jacques Vallée and Chris Auerbach did a book called Wonders in the Sky, maybe a decade ago, that is a chronology of really interesting UFO reports through history. And Albert Rosales, who wrote the Humanoid Encounter series, he also chronicles things over thousands of years. And if you look, you'll see that there are repeating patterns throughout history, that when these objects sometimes interfered with a battle, for example, that it actually changed the course of history. There's also evidence that in certain areas there was weather manipulation. One excellent example of possible weather manipulation was during the War of 1812. It was actually 1814. The British were surrounding Washington, D.C., moving in. They burned the White House. They were burning all of the buildings. Dolly Madison had to escape Washington, D.C. with some portraits of George Washington. And right when the British looked like they were on the verge of destroying the United States and taking it back, the storm of the millennium occurred that afternoon, and accompanied by tornadoes and stuff. It was so bad the British had to withdraw, and they were never able to recapture Washington, D.C. again. And the United States went on to be the great country that we are today. So the question is, was there some sort of manipulation? Another thing is back in 571 AD, and this is probably my favorite example. The king of Yemen had converted to Christianity. And at the time, the Meccans in what's now Saudi Arabia, they were still animists, okay? There was no Islam yet. But they had the Kaaba, which is that black tent that supposedly houses the Stone of God, which I believe is a meteorite. And when the Muslims do the Hajj every year, walking around the Kaaba, they're actually walking around the meteorite in a tent. So anyway, the king of Yemen wants Mecca to convert to Christianity, and they tell him, no, we're very happy the way we are. So he assembles his army. He's got his elephants, and he's got the most modern army of the day in 571 AD. He marches on Mecca, and this ragtag bunch of Meccans comes out to meet him, and Mecca's going to get leveled. All of a sudden, according to the Quran, this miracle happens. These black birds, these big black birds with pebbles in their mouths, fly over the Yemeni army, boom, wipe them out. And in later Islamic commentaries, it says that the skin on the Yemeni soldiers fell off their arms and their legs and their face. So this, to me, if you look at it with technological eyes, may not have been blackbirds with pebbles, but it may have been modern fighter jets with cluster bombs taking out an ancient army in a matter of, half an hour, maybe radiological cluster bombs to make sure they all die. Why is this important? Why would modern fighter jets be flying around in 571 AD killing Yemenis? The bottom line is that 9 months later, Muhammad was born. So had the Yemeni army raised Mecca, the chances are there'd be no Islam today. So was there some sort of technological help from the future to ensure that Muhammad would be born? I could give you Jewish examples. I could give you Christian examples of interference. So when I'm talking about these time travelers, it almost seems that there's more than one team, and that they have three different goals trying to change history. And, we don't know the outcome, but apparently they must know the outcome, and they want to change it for some reason. And they're doing everything they can to redirect the timeline. At least that's my theory. Dr. Michael Masters has a similar theory. So I'm not the only one. Michio Kaku is saying that we're 5 years away from, actual time travel, that we can do it mathematically now, and I believe that. If you ever read some of the papers of Dr. Eric Davis, I think, when you talk about Ben Rich earlier, I think we may already have that technology, because I can show you other examples. Absolutely. where we're dealing with fast fixed wing aircraft 500 years ago. All right, in a lot of these UFO reports, spear-like objects, and it's craft designed to fly in Earth's atmosphere using lift. Yeah. What are they doing 500 years ago?
There have been rumors about time travel for some time now. There's the rumor of the so-called chronovisor that is held at the Vatican, which enables you to envision past events. My understanding is it almost acts like a holographic kind of a projector. The other thing, I imagine you've probably heard of Andrew Basago.
No.
He is a lawyer who claims to have participated in time travel experiments at Sandia National Laboratories and I think, I want to say Sandia National Laboratories when he was a kid and his father was involved in the program.
I know who you're talking about. Yep.
Yeah, I don't want to vouch for that. The story seems wild, but it seems to be also consistent about this fellow that was involved in this program. He claims that there's a photograph of him at the Gettysburg Address that Lincoln gave, and there's a picture of him, Andrew Basago, during one of these time travel episodes. It's purportedly the last image of Abraham Lincoln also. But nonetheless, I think that it's possible that time travel could take place. The amount of energy that would be required, I imagine, would be absolutely tremendous, just like the amount of energy that is required to keep a vehicle aloft without traveling through the air. The equations on that are pretty phenomenal. The amount of energy that's required to produce so-called anti-gravity. Some folks have said that the amount of energy required to produce anti-gravity for even one of these small craft would have to be produced by a mass that is greater than the Earth itself. I'm not sure that I buy into that because we're watching some pretty fantastic things right in front of our eyes. Some anti-gravity technology taking place. How it's done, whether it's electrogravitically or whether it's done by actually the manipulation of gravity itself. I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that, about the nature of the propulsion systems that we're dealing with? Are these some of these craft, in particular the ET craft, are they being, pushed along by anti-gravitational forces?
Well, there's a couple of, let me tell you, there's 3 MUFON cases where people drew what they said was an object head-on up in the sky, and it had triangle windows, and it was very smooth. It sort of went like this, all right? And all of these were prior to October 2022, I think it was. And what they were drawing, these objects were white. What we believe they were drawing was the B-2 Raider bomber. Okay, because when the military came out, I guess last year, and said they were flying these things since October 2019 or whatever, the photograph of this first one is exactly what these people were drawing. But the interesting thing about this, if these people were drawing this stealth fighter, all right, in the sky prior to its official first flight, they all said that the thing was hovering in the sky silently. So I don't know any, airplane except the Harrier jet that's very, very loud because it's blowing the exhaust down to keep it hovering in one spot. These things seem to have been using some sort of anti-gravity technology. I just heard the other day that they have something with high altitude aircraft now that at a certain height, very high up, they're able to kick in an anti-gravity propulsion system. So I absolutely believe that we have anti-gravity. My understanding is that the United States started working on anti-gravity technology as far back as World War II.
That's my understanding as well. And interestingly, and you tell me if this is your recollection as well, but having paid attention to this particular topic in particular, the potential for anti-gravity technology, there was some talk about it for quite some time, even up until the late 60s and early 70s. And then all of a sudden, they didn't talk about it anymore. I remember reading in Popular Mechanics, Popular Science when I was a kid about, anti-gravity and how much it was going to change things. And all of a sudden, they just didn't talk about it anymore. And I always, sort of have reached the conclusion that one of the reasons they don't talk about it anymore is because they figured it out and they didn't want the secret getting out. And which is unfortunate, because what's going to happen, Bob, is that technology will be reserved for the use and pleasure of a few at the expense of the many, which I'm sure you probably feel like you are included in as well. I feel like I'm one of the many rather than one of the few, and will not likely never ever taste the fruit of this kind of technology. But let's face it, this is a world dominating technology. And it's no wonder that they want to keep it secret, because if they're not able to keep it secret and we're all able to participate, then that would be bad.
There was a book. I think the guy's name was Paul Hill. He was a NASA scientist. He wasn't allowed to publish it. His daughter published it after his death because of his non-disclosure agreements. But in his book, it's all about possible propulsion systems on UFOs, and his big argument was that they would use anti-gravity. But in the book, he says the problem is that you need anti-gravitons, which haven't been discovered yet. So if they have discovered anti-gravitons in the meantime, then that's all we needed to complete the formula and produce the engine.
Yeah, I've heard that theory as well, that there's gravity is, that there's a particle associated with it, as there are with many fields, and I've heard that theory before. I can tell you that one of the things that Lou Elizondo told us when he came to talk about some of these things with the board back in 2018, that he told us that they, or at least he thought that this was anti-gravity technology, and that the shape of the craft not only told you what the function of the craft was, but also what the configuration of the gravity generation or gravity generators within the craft took. So a triangular craft would have 3 gravity generators at each apex. A saucer-shaped craft or a spherical-shaped craft would have 1 gravity generator in the middle. And like a Tic Tac, a little bit longer, would have 2 gravity generators. And this is just, I can't say that this is exactly how it was, but this is one of the things that they postulated, that they were in fact some kind of anti-gravity technology. But I cannot for the life of me think about or conceive of what they could possibly use for a fuel outside of course, element 115, which Bob Lazar talked about. But I don't know what conclusions to draw about that either, other than Bob's story's consistent. But have you ever thought about that? About what?
There's a kid now. That guy, Professor Simon. He's got the big white hair. He's been doing videos. He was interviewing.
He's good.
You know what I'm talking about? Yeah, he's sort of strange Einstein-y type of guy. But he was interviewing this guy, this young guy, Joshua. I can't think of his last name. And he was saying that that these Tic Tacs are actually using a type of aerogel vacuum balloon, and that's why at the bottom of the Tic Tac there's these little, L-shaped things hanging off that can, once the vacuum is released, these things can go from the surface of the ocean up into space in a matter of seconds. So that's, I think, the competing theory to anti-gravity right now.
I want to touch again just briefly on the time travel thing. I think maybe in the past you may have touched on the possibility that time travel is not anything new, that it was actually they actually may have figured it out some time ago. Do you subscribe to the Silurian hypothesis, the idea that there have been advanced technological civilizations prior to our modern civilization, which arose 10,000 years ago? Or what's your take on that, Bob?
Yeah, I absolutely believe that that's totally possible, because by now all traces of that civilization would be gone. That maybe they were some sort of precursor to humans. Also, they weren't actually human. Because we don't know what happened that far back. There's a lot of evidence that there was some sort of worldwide flood. A lot of cultures talk about it. There's the people that like Sitchin, Zachariah Sitchin, who said it was the Anunnaki and that they had to leave before the flood. So I always had a problem with the fact that they tell us right now, if you build a time machine, you can only go forward and then back to the day the time machine was built. So if we built the time machine today, we can't go back to Mecca in 571 AD. We can only go back to today. All right. So there's two ways you can resolve that. Is that one, in the future, we overcome that problem. Okay. Or two, the time machine's been here for a very, very long time, to answer your question. All right. That maybe the time machine has existed for tens of thousands of years. Maybe the time machine was brought here from somewhere else.
Mm. And if that barrier even really truly exists, it may very well be that you can in fact travel forward and backwards in time to a time far in the distant past. Mm-hmm. I think that we always have to keep our minds open to those possibilities. I hate to talk in absolutes, I know that especially in science, scientists in particular, professors that teach have a tendency to reach conclusions that they have a difficult time letting go of. And so they have these darlings that they've built up over the time of their careers, and they reach these conclusions. Well, that's just simply not possible, whatever that is. And so, no matter what the possibility is, I always try to keep an open mind. And I think that, certainly time travel could very well be possible. Certainly, the multiple worlds theory, the idea that maybe we are living adjacent to universes that are somewhat similar to ours, or maybe completely dissimilar. Why wouldn't that be true, especially when the math tells us that is a possibility?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I absolutely believe that we have the math. I mean, when you go back to Ben Rich again, it's like, I don't think it's inconceivable that we're already on Mars and that NASA's just a big publicity front, for the American public, because they really can't tell us what they're actually doing. The other thing that always fascinated me was, I don't know if you remember Ivan T. Sanderson from the 60s. He was the original cryptozoologist. That was like the first book, I think, that my uncle ever bought me about UFOs and Sasquatch and stuff like that. But he coined the term called UPARTs, which is short for out of place things. Yeah. Like when they find the screw in a rock, or they find, radio diodes from a battery in a rock that's 3 million years old. You say, how the heck did, that little piece of technology end up, in a coal mine, that hasn't been, opened up in 3 million years, but they find a piece of technology down there. So was there Silurians here before us? I absolutely think that we don't even scratch the tip of what went on longer than 10,000 years ago.
I agree with that. I think that it's very possible, especially considering the brevity of our own civilization and when it purportedly has arisen, and how it purportedly has arisen. There's been epochs of geological time prior to our arrival here, and I see no reason why a prior, perhaps even a reptilian species could not have arisen, become intelligent, and even learned all of the things that we've learned about space travel, and perhaps even more, become even more advanced and then left. I think that we need to open our minds to that possibilities. It reminds me of them, like a hamster, and they spend their lives in a cage, and they have, so think about that hamster and what they know about the world in relationship to what we know about the world, and then think about yourself as the hamster. What we know about the universe and about the things around us is equivalent to that, and perhaps even more so, because there's so much out there that we can't even fathom. And this notion of visitors from another planet or another existence coming to our place in the universe is really, in my mind, not so far-fetched. Why would it not be so? Why don't tell me, like I hear folks like, Neil deGrasse Tyson saying that, the notion of that there's aliens here, is just impossible. I mean, you have seen some of the things he said about that, and as a scientist, I can't fathom that particular attitude. Why wouldn't it be so, Bob?
Right. Why did Carl Sagan originally believe that was a possibility, and then towards the end of his career, sort of poo-pooed it? It's like, did somebody get to him, and tell him you got to stop talking like that, or your career's over? All right. I definitely think that we're closed-minded in that sense, that there's stuff that might be going on that we don't understand. I mean, we didn't even talk about like interdimensional possibilities. All right. Like David Brush saying that the United States has in their possession a craft that on the outside is 40 feet wide, but when you go inside, it's the size of a football field, because the outside of the craft is in a different dimension than the inside of the craft. And then one of the things I've been looking into lately, I collect good cases that I see a pattern. The stuff that happens in people's bedrooms. God bless his soul. Earl Grey just died. Earl Grey Anderson. I'm going to miss him a lot. He had the case where he summoned, he wanted an encounter, and then his wall opened up like a spiral galaxy and his beams came through. My goodness, you'd be amazed at how many cases there are in the MUFON database of things coming through, machines coming through, entities coming through people's walls. Where are they coming from? You know what I mean? So it's like, we have time travelers, aliens, Silurians, interdimensionals. Who knows what's really going on?
I think it's probably all of that. I've heard in my own investigations more than once about cases where folks have, encountered these craft and then gone inside, and it's as you say, they're huge inside. And how is that? How do you move from one dimension to another simply by passing a barrier? Or maybe it has something to do with the nature of the materials themselves. You just don't know, But
Well, I'll tell you too. Travis Walton said the same thing when he went into that craft. It was massive inside. And I will tell you that there was somebody who I didn't see them speak, but they talked about their time at Area 51. And I don't know if you're familiar with Pine Gap in Australia, that U.S. facility on the ground. And
yes,
he said at this meeting that you could walk through a door at Area 51 and be in Pine Gap. Right?
Wow, that is amazing. I've heard of a massive underground tunnel network that runs the entire length of the country, and basically a spider web underneath the whole country, with which joins a number of different underground facilities. I've heard that many times, but gosh, who knows, Bob? I mean, we're like I said, we're just part of the many, and likely will, but the neat thing is that it's really fun to try to figure all that stuff out and figure out as much as you can being in the positions that we're in. That's the fun part, is wondering and thinking about it and then getting together and discussing it when we have an opportunity. And that's why I love the MUFON Symposium, because you get to hang out with all the people that know about these things, and you get to have these discussions with really interesting people that have the same interests that you do. And so I'm looking forward to seeing you at the symposium this year.
Yeah, let me do a commercial for the symposium.
You betcha.
It's going to be July 17th to the 21st. 17th, though, is going to be field investigator training. That's a Thursday. Everything kicks off Friday with the banquet, pretty much. Speaker panels, great speakers, Thomas Jane, Michael Stratt, experiencer workshops, a side trip to the Air and Space Museum at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. So it's going to be very, very interesting. It's going to be in Cincinnati, Ohio. And if you can't make it, you can go to www.mufonsymposium.com and sign up for the live stream, which you can see from anywhere in the world for just $99. How about that for commercial?
That's pretty darn good. You ought to be on TV. Bob, well, I tell you, I really appreciate you joining me here today, and I look forward to seeing you this summer. I've already, like I said, I've already bought my tickets. I've already bought my plane ride, and all I have to do now is pay for my hotel and the fun stuff, So again, Bob, I appreciate you joining me here today, and I hope you get to join me again in the future on the podcast.
Okay, great. Yep. I'll see you in July.
All right. I appreciate it, Bob. I'll be back in a few moments with some afterthoughts.
MUFON 2025.
Get the live stream.
Nothing will prepare you for what we are going to reveal. Get the live stream. The Russian materials. The results are in. Bob Spearing.
It also showed signs that it had come in from space and that it had come in at a fast velocity through our atmosphere. Within the actual substance, there was a crystalline sort of structure to it that seemed to be organic and possibly growing.
The Stringfield Diaries. Early psionics.
This is the story of secret government programs designed to interact with non-human beings using psychic abilities and to shoot down craft with a weapon. That weapon was codenamed
Government Secrets Exposed. Get the live stream. Michael Stratt. Retrievals of the Third Kind. Thomas Jane.
Technium will take on a life of its own. It'll become its own self-organizing system with goals.
MUFON 2025. Get the live stream. Only $99. That includes a year of access to MUFON TV. Nothing will prepare you for what we are going to reveal. Get the live stream.
Get the live stream. Nothing will prepare you for what we are going to reveal.
Get the live stream. Go to MUFONsymposium.com/now.
Get the live stream. Nothing will prepare you.
Get the live stream.
Stepping back and looking at the breadth of his work and the cases MUFON investigates under Bob's direction, it's clear we're exploring something far more intricate and profound than just lights in the sky. We're talking about phenomena that blur the lines between physical reality, consciousness, and possibly dimensions beyond our current understanding or comprehension. In a world often shrouded in skepticism, secrecy, and a lack of transparent official answers, where even potential physical evidence can mysteriously vanish, Bob and the dedicated network of MUFON investigators continue the vital work of applying the scientific method, collecting data, investigating on the ground, conducting lab analyses, and seeking rational conclusions even when none are immediately apparent. This isn't just about UFOs or UAPs. It's about the fundamental questions of who we are, our place in the cosmos, and the true nature of the reality we inhabit. The truth, as Bob highlighted, might be more complex, more sobering, even more unsettling than we can currently imagine. But the pursuit of that truth, the willingness to ask the difficult questions and follow the evidence wherever it leads, is perhaps the most essential human endeavor of all. Bob Spearing and MUFON's work reminds us that the reality of the unexplained is not just a fascinating mystery. It is an ongoing investigation happening right now, impacting people around the globe. Keep watching, keep listening, and most importantly, keep asking the big questions. The journey continues. Thank you once again for joining us here today. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to like, share, and subscribe, and click the bell for notifications. Make sure to leave your comments below. We'll see you next time right here on the official MUFON podcast.